Um, I used to paint the landscape like a tourist in watercolour. I'd round a corner and I'd see something spectacular, which you do round every corner in the Dingle Peninsula, and I'd just sit and paint it. And then somebody introduced me to these ancient poems called the Din Shankas, which are stories about places. So I began using these poems to find my painterly sites, and would track up rivers and up mountains and round headlands to find the spots mentioned in these ancient poems. And I came up with a whole series called Legendary Landscapes, and had an exhibition of the painting some time ago, and always knew that there was more to say. So when I broke my hip, I couldn't get to these out-of-the-way places, so I started going to creative writing classes, and they encouraged me to write about these places. So that's what I did, and out of it came this book, Legendary Landscapes of Ireland, which I launched a year ago. And so many of the stories are around here, like the story of Lochadoon over there, where the chieftain was reared his son, and a rival tribe came over the mountains and wanted to steal cattle. So the chieftain hid his young son under the waterfall, in a cave under the waterfall, so his son wouldn't join the battle. But he heard the clamour of battle under the thundering of the waterfall and joined in. And that's one of the stories. And they were battling for so long that they drove them mad. They were driven mad. And then I only heard from the farmer who runs his sheep up half that valley that they went round to a spring, a little sacred well around the edge of the mountains, and which actually cures madness. So I only found that out last year, so I included that in the book too as well. I'll just show you the picture there. And there's that's the one I did at Lochadoon. That's the young man, the son of the warrior, hidden underneath the waterfall, and Lochadoon. And of course there's a fort on the island in Lochadoon.
And where they displayed that painting, where is it now?
I still have that painting.
Oh, you have it.
Yeah.
You didn't sell it?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Some of the others I haven't. The next one actually is in a community centre in Ballybrack, and it's about the voyage of Bran, who preceded St Brendan. And I think St Brendan actually copied some of his, well, followed his route, really.
Okay.
And I'll just tell you about that. And that starts in Brandon, Bran's land, and the area around is called Tir Bran. There's competition. There's somewhere in the north that says it's Bran's land, but I think Bran's land is here. And that's what I've called it, the voyage of Bran. And this woman comes to Bran's camp, and with a silver singing branch, and persuades Bran and his comrades to go sailing around the place.
Okay, very nice.
And to stop drinking. And when I painted this scene, a lovely man called Mick Brick, the late Mick Brick, who used to live at the head of the pier there. His son still lives there. He's Mick Brick Jr., but he told me the story of the voyage of Bran, and he said that the stream coming down from the Branton Mountain was the entrance to Chernobyl as well. So I sat down behind the pier to paint the scene.
And you have that at home as well, yes?
No, that's in a community centre in Ballybrack. They bought it. They bought both of them. It's where they learn computers.
Oh, yes.
What is that?
Very nice.
But I have it postcard size reproductions, which I think. And then anyway, he sails to the island of women, which is off Kappa Strand. It's called Isla Ban Ushla, the island of the gentlewomen. And he sails there.
It's out there somewhere.
It's down there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's inland from Black Island. Yeah.
Okay.
You can't quite see it from here.
Not from here. Okay.
Um,
Not too far away.
No.
On the way.
He sails to the island of women, and they give him a wonderful time. And he thinks he only stayed a couple of months on the island of women. He feasting and well looked after.
And that painting you did as well, yes?
Yes.
And where is that now?
That's also in the
Ballybrack.
community centre in Ballybrack. Yeah. And that's the island as it was. And anyway, Brand sails to this island,
Yes.
and is welcomed. The chieftain of the women leads him ashore with a silver rope,
Okay.
and stays there. Has such a lovely time. But eventually, when he was leaving, the lady chieftain said, "Don't set foot on the island of Ireland again." That was just her warning. And one of his comrades was very homesick, and he leapt ashore from the boat. The boat didn't land, and turned to dust, because it had actually been on the island 1,000 years. And Bran just had time to shout to the people on land, the occupants, the residents of Brandon, what had happened. And they'd heard the story of Bran, but they'd thought it was, a legend from many and many years ago. And then he sailed away into the blue, and the poem doesn't actually tell what happens then, but he probably might have even discovered America.
Yeah, well, there you go.
There you are.
So that book, if one wanted to buy that book, where would one get it?
You can get it from Amazon.
Amazon.
You just put the name Legendary Landscapes of Ireland by Misha.
Okay. And can you give a small little bit of a history about yourself?
Oh, well, have you got half an hour?
Oh, we don't. We have only about
Okay, well,
1 minute left
Briefly, I was born in Australia because my mother had been evacuated from Hong Kong. My father's profession had been in Hong Kong, and I was thought of and arrived in my mother's tummy to Australia. And shortly after that, my father was captured by the Japanese and spent the rest of the Far Eastern War in a Japanese prisoner camp, but survived it. He forgave them. Anyway, my mother decided to leave Australia only 3 weeks after I was born, and I only discovered why. I wondered why she wanted to leave the security of Australia. When I went into the oldest pub in Dublin that used to have lodgers for about $1 a night, and one man had a speech defect, and I thought he had a cleft palate. But when you could hear his story and interpret it, he got a bit of shrapnel through the roof of his mouth when they bombed. Was it Brisbane or Darwin? North Australia. And my mother must have thought that the whole of Australia was going to be overrun, and so she got on an empty ship going back to Europe, in amongst a whole lot of wounded soldiers from Singapore, Far East and things. And she only tells the story of our domestic crisis, because she had to breastfeed me and these wounded shoulders walking up and down the companionway, and they had to.
Any noise there up?
Yeah, they're
Where's that work?
They're facing a new building with lovely rocks, beautifully done.
Beautiful.
Mm.
So,
So we came to England, came back to England. I think the ship landed in Derry as well. We landed in Glasgow and went to my in-laws, anyway, my mother's in-laws, who she'd never met because she married my father in Hong Kong. Then when my father was released, he had a small recuperation, and I'd never met him, of course. And then we all went back to Hong Kong, and I spent my childhood in Hong Kong, and then was sent to a horrible boarding school all the way when I was 8 years old, and we were treated like a Nazi concentration camp. The headmistress obviously didn't like little girls. Then my senior school was much gentler, and then I went to art college in London. It used to be called the Central School of Arts and Crafts. Now it's called Central St Martin's. It's combined. And then I never took to London at all, so I was looking around for somewhere where I would be happy, and came on a family holiday to Ireland, to the west of Ireland, to Connemara, and fell for the landscape. People think I fell for an Irishman, but I didn't. I fell for the Irish landscape, and I never left, and that was over 50 years ago.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Okay.